Hello and welcome back to Startups, People and Equity. This is a space where we discuss topics, related to startups, people and equity. We hope that you will enjoy listening to today's episode as much as we enjoyed recording it. Let's dive straight in. Hi Karime, hi Catarina.
Hello.
We've been really looking forward to this conversation. We all know each other. We work together, and therefore both Tamas and I know you from before, and we both know that you bring such unique perspectives to many topics. And I need to make a distinction here because it's not just because of your experience, but also because of who you are as people, and that's why we wanted to have you here as guests. So you're both brilliant and both from actually unconventional backgrounds. And I had the pleasure of working very closely with both of you when we were all still in CX. But now looking at you, you're both leaders in your own domains and both of you in your own ways. So to start with Karime, maybe. Karime has experienced life through many different continents. I had to pay attention to that word because it's not just countries, it's continents and many different roles. And then you joined Ledgy as the 10th employee, working in CX. But currently you live in Zurich, continent of Europe, and working in product marketing at Ledgy. You have this incredible ability to memorize everything, and you want to use it for good. So my first impression of you was, oh my God, she's brilliant and she wants to use it for good. And you went on to prove that with your master's thesis, with leading climate and DEI committees, and distilling and curating the incredibly complex Ledgy jargon into digestible human language that now enables more people to share equity, even in situations where it wasn't possible before. So very, very happy I got to meet you. And Catarina, you've experienced the big corporate life at Kaizen, then Ferrero in Luxembourg, and then you joined a small startup in Ledgy in Zurich. And you have this different but incredible ability to lead a conversation and people's thought process towards a common goal. Which, if I'm looking back at it now, I'm like, okay, of course. Now she's a product manager. that's it, right? And you always brought very clear direction and advice to clients, colleagues, and newer team members, and everyone could rely on you. So now, just introducing both of you, I think it's clear how valuable team members such as you two are in any startup. So happy I got to work with you. Very excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Bella, for this such kind introduction. Yeah, we're very excited. I'm very excited to be here. I'm super excited.
Would you like to add anything?
I mean, other than that, I was very excited to work with you too for so long. So we're very happy.
Yeah, I just realized that even I spent a bit of time in CX. If you remember, I think 2 months, I was replying to emails that came through, mostly from one of the investors of Ledgy when we rolled out to their private individual network. That was fun.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I was bugging you a lot, right, Karime?
Yeah, no, because it was supposed to be my thing, and then it was supposed to be my thing, and then it got pushed back until I was back in uni, so I was only working part-time, and Tamas had to take it over, and yeah, it was hard.
Startup life.
Yeah.
We just showcased that.
Yeah.
How did you land in the startup world, Catarina?
You already did a bit of my intro. So I worked at Kaizen and then at Ferrero. The last company I was working at is Ferrero. So it's like a fast moving consumer goods company with a bit of more of a corporate environment. And I really enjoyed being there. It was one of my first jobs after university. So I learned a lot. But after a while, I realized I wanted to try something new. And I wanted to work in a company whose mission I identified with. I was also looking for a company that had a product or service that I also identified it with and that was valuable for its clients, and a company that was also like more sustainable. So I was not looking specifically for startup jobs, but so my search was broader. But then I found Ledgy on a LinkedIn post, like as in like a position, and it kind of filled these three requisites. Like I really identified with Ledgy's mission, which is like to democratize ownership and also to drive change through entrepreneurship. The product, after I learned what it was, because I was not very familiar with equity and startups, I actually did think it could solve like a very valuable problem. And in terms of sustainability, Ledgy's always had like since then like very strong like sustainability commitments, and like all of the furniture was like secondhand, and it was like bring your own device. So I thought it was quite cool, and honestly, like back then, I really also like really liked the team. So this what really drove me to join the startup world.
Would you choose it again?
Definitely, yeah. No, I've been really enjoying working at Ledgy. I feel like you have like a lot more impact. I mean, you feel your impact more closely, I would say. And yeah, there's all of these things about that people say about working at startups, and that's what also drove me to it back then, because I was like, okay, I guess now is the time to check it out, let's say. And I definitely think it proves out. Like I agree. I also am now one of those people who are always telling my friends like, you should work at a startup. It's so cool. No, I mean, I think I've been very lucky with like the team and the people I got to work with. So yeah, I've had a really good experience so far.
What about you, Karime?
Yeah, so I kind of landed in the startup world by accident. I mean, I'll be honest, I did not have a great impression of the startup world from my studies, and I just kind of fell into it because Armon, the only salesperson at the time, he called me one day in the middle of the night. It wasn't the middle of the night for him, but I was on a trip, so it was the middle of the night for me. And I was like, why is this guy calling me? And he recruited me. And he he was somebody that I really trusted at the time. Like I didn't know him super well, but I always had a very good impression of, him and like what he would be doing and stuff. So it seemed like a good opportunity. And then I met the team. I had an interview with our CEO Yoko, and I was very inspired by her, like motivated by having a woman CEO that worked in tech. I thought that was really cool. And I also, when I looked at the company, because we were 10 people at the time, so there wasn't that much like employer branding, but in the team page, I think there was this one like phrase about how entrepreneurship drives positive change. And I was like, oh, that's nice. And so I was somehow like drawn to the mission. So it was really like the team and the mission that I just kind of was drawn to when I was recruited. And actually my whole like recruitment process was like a whole thing, because then I didn't say yeah, like it was a whole thing. But yeah, then I just kind of fell into it. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Maybe I can jump in with a question. I'm super curious. A lot of people talk about the stages in startups, and Ledgy went from nothing to now post Series B. I'm wondering if you can identify or see stages in your own career at Ledgy. How did that change? What did you go through? What are the different series that you went through at Ledgy?
So I can go, because I think I have like when I was thinking about this, at first I was like, okay, Series A, and then I was like, well, that's, I don't know. But I think because I was like this early employee, I was number 10. Obviously not as early as other people, but still. I kind of see this part of like when we were like super scrappy, and it was just like everybody was trying to do everything all the time, or like we all knew about everything that everybody was doing. Like we would have meetings in the morning where everybody went through the points that they were going to work on today, or like this sort of stuff. We all had like our all hands. We all told each other what we were going to do this week, and it was all this cross-functional team things. So I kind of see it as like we kind of started off, and it was very like wearing many hats. Everybody kind of knows everything, and we're all super scrappy, and we don't have that much resources. And then you kind of move into this like, well, we have more resources, we're in a high growth phase, and you as this early employee are kind of in a bit of a like there's like a tension a bit of like that there are these new people coming in and they're a bit more specialized and you're still wearing this general hat, and you kind of have to learn how to specialize, and you have to learn how to scale things or make processes or these sorts of things that you never had to do before. And you have to change your mindset from like super scrappy to like, actually no, I can like maybe buy a tool for that now, or something like that. And you also kind of let go of these like company-wide things that you were doing before, or you have to learn to let go, which is difficult for me. But you kind of learn into that, and then you start becoming more specialized with the rest of the new joiners, which is also hard. You move from this like, well, I used to be involved with like product and engineers and CX and marketing and involved with everyone, and now I like only talk to the marketing team all day, like it's kind of a difficult transition, but it's like interesting. Yeah, those are my stages, I guess. And I don't know what happens after, so we'll see.
Episode 2. It's going to be
Yeah.
part 2. How was it for you, Catarina? Because you did join from a very processified environment.
I would say yes, but still, like, I mean, I was like employee 16, so it was quite a while after, but still felt, not super process heavy compared to at least now. But yeah, I mean, when I thought about stages of a company, I was maybe a bit more biased because now I'm in product. So I was kind of also looking at it from like a more product perspective. I feel like, so I joined before also Series A. And I feel like we started by like building, we're still trying to like find product market fit at the time, I would say. So I think that the company was still building the product a bit more horizontally, kind of like building multiple use cases and trying to see which one would get more traction instead of investing, for example, too much in a single use case. And then I feel like then from these 2 years that I've been here, you can really see the transition because you get more clients, you get more feedback from them, you get more, like what are the actual like painful pain points that you can solve? Where should you double down? Where does it add more value? What are clients willing to pay for? Because that's also a big deal. And so once you actually identify that with more input, I think then it changes from like a more like from a broad, more product development into like kind of doubling down and focusing on, for example, a single use case. So I think we're also where we are at now. It's more like in this trying to focus part and deciding where. So yeah, I think from a product perspective, these were like kind of like the stages I thought of.
Do I remember correctly, Catarina, that you applied for a biz dev role?
Yeah, I did apply for a biz dev role. I had an interview with you.
Right. And then how do you feel about that you got an offer to join CX? We were like, I think we thought that your skill set is a much better fit there. How do you feel about these two teams now?
Yeah, so I applied for a business development traineeship. At the time, I did not understand that it was purely sales. And I did the whole interview process. Like the interview with you was like presenting the pitch deck that I had created, doing a demo of Ledgy, like negotiation, roles, etc. And basically the feedback that Ledgy gave me was that they liked me, but they didn't think I was that motivated for like the sales and negotiation, which was like the core of the role. And they were right, honestly. Like, I'm super glad you picked up on that. And you kind of like redirected me into CX. I know after that it was actually Spelle that pulled me into CX. Super glad that you did so. So then I did the CX, all of the interviews, and I actually enjoyed a lot more like doing the homework challenge, for example, which is, like giving you a piece of kind of like replicating what would be your day-to-day. And I did enjoy a lot more doing that than the sales one, for example. So yeah, and then going into CX, like once I kind of like discovered that, and like before deciding if I actually wanted to move with the customer experience role. I just, I like saw Spella's and Yoko's interview on YouTube talking about the role, and also like just read about it, and it was more about like, like dealing with all of these um, founders and leaders of startups, being really in touch with the startup world, being able to learn about equity, and really being the voice of the customer for the company. So that I thought it was, I was really excited about that, and I really enjoyed doing it. So yeah.
I think this is a perfect time to ask about the next steps in your careers, because you both transitioned into a PM thing, product marketing and product management. So that is a big thing. So transitioning from one career into another, there's like whole Udemy courses, or there's whole therapies that can specialize in how to transition from one part to another. What was going through your mind when you were deciding what to do?
I think for me it was a little different because I had studied marketing, so it wasn't like this completely unknown thing, kind of like it was for Catarina, because she didn't study
product management. Yeah, because you cannot.
Yeah, but like I had studied marketing, so I kind of like knew what marketing was and this sort of thing, and when I decided to make the switch, I think my switch was a bit more, I don't know, kind of all over the place, but I think what took me to there was that I was very happy at Ledgy, and I was very happy in my role, and I really loved working with Bella and Catarina, and I I just thought of what would I look for if I ever did not have this role. Like if I wasn't in CX at Ledgy, what would I look for? I knew it was going to be marketing, so I just thought that I would work towards that, starting as soon as I could. So that's kind of what I was thinking of mostly. That kind of pushed me to do it, but it was still a super hard transition. Even though, as I said, I had studied marketing, I had worked a little bit in marketing before, so it wasn't that new, but it was a big transition within the company. So yeah.
CX sits, in between marketing, sales, product management. Was having access to those other departments making your decision easier? Do you think like a transition, if you wanted to transition to engineering or, I don't know, ops and finance, something more removed, do you think it would be harder?
Maybe it's because of the early employee thing, but I didn't find them all removed at all. Like, I feel like I could have moved into finance if I liked finance. I don't like finance, but like if I wanted to, I probably could have. But it's because it's maybe this early employee bias that I thought, like, for me, they were all just as interconnected with the others as anything else. So, not for me.
But I do think, there's like the whole client experience that you brought into marketing. I'm just saying, like, it would be harder to like translate into finance or engineering, which you definitely need to learn a whole new skill. Like I think there's still like more transferable skills. I also like, I think for me, as in like product management, I also think there was a lot of transferable skills that I could bring from CX. So.
That's a very good point. I did always, like, I loved being with customers, and I knew that being with customers for so long would help me in marketing always. Like, this is something I always had in mind. But I think maybe I meant more of like a company level that it would have been similar. But yeah, it's true that there's more transferable skills between CX and marketing than CX and engineering.
What about for you, Catarina? Because of the difference that Karime explained, maybe is it that different, or do you feel it was the same as transitioning for Karime?
Mine was a bit different because so it was more the product team that came to talk with me, asking if I would potentially be interested in joining as a PM. I had conversations like with Marina, who was the PM at the time, saying just like informal conversations, saying that maybe if I was doing any other job other than CX, it could potentially be product management, because her job seemed fun, but I only saw like a little bit of it, right? And she took this literally. No, I'm kidding. But when they started hiring for another PM, they thought about hiring internally because it's a lot easier for them, and they thought of me. So they came to me, and so I had to kind of prompt myself to start thinking about this because I never had. I remember talking to you, Spella, right away because I just wanted to be open, and you were super supportive, which was a really it was super positive for my experience. So I had these conversations with Ben, who's the CPO, Marina, you. I also went to talk with other PMs outside of Ledgy, just to understand if I would be interested or not, because I always say that it was not changing from something I didn't like to something that I liked. It was changing from something that I really liked to something that I potentially would like even better. So it was a very hard decision, I would say. But yeah, so once I understood a bit more about it, I did decide to change. I thought it could be something interesting, and it was super nice to bring my client experience. So you're very close to the client's pain points, and you can bring that into the product side, and now you're more in charge of building the product strategy and thinking of what you're going to build to solve these pain points for the client. So I really also now doing PM, and I think it's super interesting. It's a great challenge.
I'm really curious to understand your points of view on what makes a great product manager and product marketer.
I think for a great PM, I think myself, I'm still learning that. I'm just saying, I've only become I've only transitioned to product management in April of this year. But so the job of a product manager, first thing is prioritization. So I think you have to be very good at that. But in order to do that effectively, efficiently, it's very important to build product intuition. I think that's why I am really glad I had my CX experience, because I think that's the best way to build product intuition, is really know what are the most important pain points for the client, and how can you add value and other things. There's a lot of other frameworks that you can learn and kind of adding on top of that. But I think I'm still also building my knowledge of product management. So yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And how about for you, Karime?
I'm also still building I'm still building as well, or still learning. I think that there's a big part of product marketing, because product marketing is very in the middle of a lot of things. It's in the middle of CX, CX, sales, marketing, product, just there. And a lot of people kind of talk about it as the bridge between GTM and product. So there's a big part of it that you have to be kind of good at connecting people and enabling them to work together and being good at collaboration. I think that's one thing. Something I found helpful is being good at words, is what people call it, just writing, being able to write. But I think that kind of similar to product management is that when you are in CX, you're a power user of Ledgy. You are the power user, and you see where the product is the most useful to you. You have to I did this and that was the most revolutionary thing, and it was amazing, or they just added this thing and it's gonna solve everything. There's these small moments in CX where we know that was the best feature. So I think that having that experience is really, really helpful in being able to communicate that to customers, because I just think you wouldn't have that if you didn't. If I wouldn't have that if I hadn't worked in CX before. So I can really tell which, or at least I think I can really tell which features bring the most value to customers, which I think is one of the most important things in product marketing. So yeah.
And if I may add, because now I'm on the spot, but yeah, no, because a lot of some things that you said really resonated with me, also about team enablement, etc. But yeah, I feel product management also sits very much between, we coordinate with also GTM, engineering, and so also being able to do this, the enablement of stakeholders, stakeholder management, and keeping everyone aligned, and communicated to them, and also then you have also the part of engineering. So just also empowering the engineering teams and being able to let them do what they do best.
I had a question. I think when you two were going through a transition, we were kind of discussing it kind of proactively, but I don't think I ever asked you about it. So you decided to transition in the middle of your career progression. So it's not like you had 20 years of experience and then you decided to make a Uber competitor, but you were going from level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the middle of those steps, you decided to transition somewhere else. If someone else were to go through a similar transition as you, what would you recommend them do, like psychologically or mentally, to prepare for a transition that could potentially lower your progression on the ladder of the steps in your career?
So what I find difficult about, especially maybe moving within a startup where you had to do all these different like generalist things, or like when I was in CX, I was doing like Ledgy's social media, like I was kind of working in marketing, or like this sort of thing. And I think what's difficult when you move within a company is it's very hard to quantify those transferable skills in the same way, maybe in the same way that somebody external would have, because it's quite difficult to quantify how much is transferable from how much you know the product. Like we were just talking about how much I know about the product because I was in CX, and how much I know. It's super hard to quantify that into, well, this is what my level should be in, in my new role. So I think that's something difficult that I like. I don't really know how to do it, but I would say that what's important is to do that before you move, to have those conversations of, here are my transferable skills, here's all of the things that I know that are super transferable into this new role, to treat it more as it's like an interview process, right? And I think we're actually the first ones in Ledgy that kind of switched, and I think they might have a bigger process for it now. But when we switched, it was a bit like, yeah, we're switching, So I would say that it's important to think about that for yourself first, and have those conversations internally first, and have that super clear and defined before you move, would be my advice. Yeah.
And I would add from like a more personal side, because as you said, like, you're kind of like going up this leveling, or like just even like in terms of your own skills, right? Like you're building up skills in this specific department or like role. So in our case, it was CX, and then you move. So it's like it is a bit of a shift. I would say imposter syndrome is a word that resonates a lot, because you're moving towards another one. It sometimes is a bit of like a step down or something, because you do need to pick up some other skills that you were not building on before, and so it's kind of like mentally prepare for that. I think we do, but it's still like when you move, you still feel a lot that kind of like imposter syndrome, or kind of like second guessing yourself, because you're also like, you were used to being quite like good in this case at CX or something, and suddenly you're like you're not as good as well, and that is hard also, like on a personal level, right? You're you need more help, you need like it's hard to go down. So just being aware of that, but also like being kind to yourself, like allowing the time to build that confidence back up again. And I think besides what you can do yourself, I think your team can really help, manager and kind of like colleagues. I think like my team of like even like engineers, other product managers, engineering managers, and my manager like really helped me to do that. They were like super like supportive, like positive reinforcement, like motivating me, or like giving me a little push or something. It's like, no, you're doing a good job, or something like this. And it already helps, because your imposter syndrome is so high that having all of these like a bit more external confirmation or something like helps you to keep steady and keep going at it.
Yeah. I think the team thing is super big, because what people don't realize, like, I mean, when you switch internally, is that it's not only a switch for you, it's a switch for the team. So if you're used to working with the team in a certain way, and they're used to coming to you for all the, I don't know, CX questions, and you're used to replying to all the CX questions, and they're used to seeing you in that light. And kind of like Catarina said, you kind of move from, like I said, CX superhuman to this like just like a normal new person, you know. I mean, yeah. It's really hard on your, like, it is really hard to like make this change. And then what's extra difficult about it is that people have to change that in their heads as well. Like they have to switch the way they think about working with you, or how they see your work, or what they're used to you doing. And if you kind of don't have these like positive little reinforcements, or you know, these little appreciation moments, or somebody doesn't tell you that you're, you know, I don't know, good at this thing, or wow, I don't know, it can be really, really hard to switch for yourself, because you also feel like people have these expectations of you that you can't meet anymore, because you have to meet other ones. And that's, I think that was super hard for me.
How did you approach that? How did you try to change people's preconceived notions of you?
I mean, I struggled with it for a really long time. I think I also struggled because I moved. I had a bit of a different experience than Catarina, because I also moved into a bit of a less established team. I moved into a team that, was definitely less established. I didn't have like another PM to onboard me. I didn't have another product marketer to tell me like, this is what you need to do. So I think there was a big part of that I had to figure it out for myself. At the same time that everybody else had to kind of figure it out as well. So I moved into a role that nobody knew what it was before I moved into it. So I had to start, first of all, defining it for me, and then second of all, telling people, well, this is product marketing and that was CX. Well, this is, you know, what I'm supposed to do, and this is not what I'm supposed to do. And then kind of try to hold your ground as much as you can. Because, and that, I mean, historically, that's kind of hard for me, but it was a big, I mean, I'm still growing into that, but it's a good kind of training for me, especially because Spella's biggest feedback to me was to say no. So, well, not the biggest, but one of my feedbacks was to say no more. So it was a good learning experience, but it is hard, and I had to find ways of validating it somehow externally. Like, hey, I know, well, this product marketing thing that says that this is product marketing, just so you know, and find boundaries, which was very difficult. But yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it was, as you said, it was quite different. It was, I would say, a bit easier because it's even going from like, there's like two bigger teams at Ledgy, like business and product. So I even went from one to the other. So, you know, like I'm like product now, you know. So the separation is a bit bigger. And as Karime said, like, you know, like there were already other PMs. There was already like Marina and Alex at this point when I moved. So I had another PM to onboard me, and it was clear, like the definition and like boundaries of my work. There was, I mean, of course, for a while, like a handover period sort of thing. Some questions. We even had the open, remember we had the slots for CX people to come and ask us questions for like 2 months after we changed roles, because we did carry a lot of the knowledge with us. We tried as much as possible to like hand it over, but there was still like quite a bit that we took with us, so we put in those timings. But yeah, so it was a bit easier. And sometimes, yeah, it's kind of like Karime says, it's like we were still talking, you know, like sometimes there's a Slack message about like some kind of like workaround, and we're both tempted to like jump in and answer. But it's also like you have to do it yourself to be like, no, this is, you know, like this is not your role anymore. And I mean, sometimes I still answer, but like other times you're like, better not, because otherwise it will turn into like a whole thing. So you have to like stop yourself and also like put in the boundaries like that.
Yeah, we would get tagged in things like for a long time, because we were the ones that knew quicker. We didn't have to test it. We had already tested it 10 times, you know. So you have to find this thing where like you reply and you kind of like, you know, reply with like a dot at the end or something, like to kind of cut it off. I don't know, but like you had to find ways of being like, but you would need to test it or something, like something that would like kind of hand the ball back to them.
Yeah. Give them their independence.
Yeah, give them their independence. And it's also super hard because you're used to this. Like sometimes the questions are interesting. Like somebody asks something and you're like, oh, I wonder how that works. And then you kind of go on to like Ledgy and you're like, and then you have to like stop yourself and be like, no, this is not my job anymore.
I need to spend my time on other things.
It's super insightful to see that the treat yourself as you want the world to treat you also works in this context, right?
Yeah.
I would like to ask you about the kind of two available career tracks that often get cited, which is like the expert or individual contributor track and the manager track. Where are you right now and where do you see yourself in the future?
Right now, I'm like in an individual contributor track. Actually, before, as in like with Pella, etc., when we were still all in CX, we kind of went more into the manager. It was never even like formal. I'm just saying, like, because we were like doing this process into going. We had amazing mentoring with Bella, which was super great. So yeah, I do think that one day I would like to go back to the manager track. Honestly, in product management specifically, it is not harder, but like also like hierarchy kind of thing. Logistically, it will not come as soon. That was also like a big part of my decision between CX and PM, like because I was already kind of in a manager, like kind of like team lead track, which I really like. I mean, I really enjoyed even like the preparation and even like a few months that I had with the new joiners at CX and kind of like onboarding them. It was super nice. And so I had to kind of like also like give that up. Besides like my change to PM, I knew that was further away. But I thought it was still like a good kind of like trade-off to do at this point of my career. So right now I'm an individual contributor. I really like it also because, as I said, like, I'm still like really learning about like product management and it's super interesting. And then I think, or I hope that one day in the future, maybe I can go back to the manager track, but it's not like, it's not.
I think I would really like to be a manager. I'm currently in the individual contributor track, and I do think I have more to do there. Like I think that product marketing is like a super duper broad kind of thing. Like there's just so much to do. There's all these different like sections of it and all this, which is super exciting. But it means I think I have a bit more work to do there as an individual contributor. But I would like to also at some point kind of go back to managing people. I really like that. And yeah, it was also a hard part of the decision to move away from CX.
Just to follow up on that, do you feel like you have to be a great individual contributor to be a good manager?
I would say not necessarily. There's parts of, especially like the higher you, I don't know, there's a lot of like the kind of like nitty gritty that you don't need to know, I would say. And there's a lot of transferable skills, like even if you come from like a different company or something like this, that you can like pick up. I think manager skills are still very different. They fall a bit more on like the soft skills, but some other things, it's hard to pin down. But there's also parts where I do think that like having the individual contributor knowledge can help you, because like if your manager comes to you with a question, or like they're facing this decision and they would like kind of like your advice on how to best approach it, etc. Maybe you want to have a bit of that knowledge to be able to help. Of course, you can direct them to someone else. And that's also okay. And it could be structured differently, right? Like the knowledge could be like sitting somewhere else within the team. But maybe it's just me, my personality. I would feel more confident, like as a manager, having some of that individual contributor knowledge. So yeah, I think maybe it is my personality, but I would definitely think so for me.
I think I agree in that same way. Like, I mean, I said it right. I would like to have more individual, especially because it's so broad and all of this. But I do think that for me, there's a part of it that like I would like to know the things. But I also think that if you had somebody like your boss that was also a product marketing like specialized person, because right now I'm in a broad marketing team and I'm the only one working in product marketing. So I also feel like I could gain some of that experience of the like getting to know product marketing a bit better if I had someone that was a manager that had specialized in product marketing.
What kind of a manager would you want to be?
It's kind of similar to like product marketing. I would like to enable and empower people to be their best. I think that people need a lot of different things to be their best, and it's you have to learn to empower people to be that. I would like to empower people to be their best. I once said that I wanted to empower people to be their best and their authentic self by being my authentic self as well. So I think that also comes with it, to just like both of you be empowered to be yourself, be your best in like the way you work or the way you do things or the way you think about things or this sort of thing. But there are some concrete things, like I would like to be somebody that celebrates her team, somebody that protects her team, somebody that also makes the step towards her team to kind of like change the power dynamics a bit. And I would like to be this is also something I would like to be super honest and like very, because I mean, maybe I would have to ask people if they like that, but I'm a person that like give me more information, and I like that makes me feel safer. So I would also like to be super transparent, because I think that also comes in hand with accountability.
Yeah, I mean, what you said about enabling and empowering people to be their best self really resonated with me. Yeah, for me, it's hard to answer to like what kind of leader would you like to be, as in I don't think I have a word or for it. But yeah, there's I've had a few managers like so far, and I don't know, I've kind of like noted down the things that I that I liked from being managed by some of them, or that I sometimes didn't like, and that then I wish I would do differently. But I mean, it falls like a lot of it overlaps with what Karime just said. But yeah, I think one very important part is like recognition for even the small things. Sometimes like the boring or like the glue work, but if you get recognized for it, like your motivation to do it, or like your spirit doing it like already improves. And really like, yeah, defending your team or their time, or at least making sure to give them like the public recognition when necessary. Yeah, celebration of achievements. Also the support and just like being human, like in difficult times, whether there's like personal or professional. Also another thing was like, even in the face of mistakes, like taking a while, of course, to like understand the why of the mistake, but also like not dwelling too much on this why and like guilting and like pointing fingers, but like quickly like moving on to finding a solution together, and even like including them in that solution, making sure that they take part in like kind of like correcting and overcoming this mistake. Yeah, and I think also like asking people for feedback. I think Svali did this a lot, and it was super good, and like just generates that like psychological safety, and also like, yeah, you get feedback on how to be a better manager for that person, because it also has to be tailored, right? Like it's a one-on-one relationship. And yeah, like positive reinforcement. I mean, this was also kind of from you, Spala, like, and having to be very intentional about it, because it's something that like doesn't come naturally. You have to like really think and be like, oh, is there like a positive reinforcement I can take from this situation, and be very intentional to actually giving it, like in the right time, in the right like space, which is, I don't know, all of the things that like managers have done to like help me also be a better person.
Yeah, there was this validation thing that I always keep with me, that like when I started at Ledgy, Spella, like I think I told everybody I was super nervous or something, and like my first meeting with Spella, in the first 5 minutes, she just said, you were hired because you're really smart and you can hit the ground running and you're gonna do amazing, and just keep that in mind and keep going. and I like wrote that down in my journal. And every time I was like, I don't know, I felt bad about myself or imposter syndrome or whatever, I would like go back to it. And that was like a very powerful thing. Like something that like managers can do is somehow give people confidence. And I think that comes with trust. That I've also found that it started, with Pella as my boss, that she would just, if you trust your people, they do what they're trusted to do. And if you keep telling them that you trust them and that they're brilliant and that they will do the things, I think that's also a very like important part of this like validation of confidence, and gives you a lot of like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go for it now.
I also have one more question before we move on to equity. So we talked about the past, the present, and kind of a little bit the future of your careers. And now I want to go further into the future, and I want to ask if VCs can get excited that maybe they'll get a pitch deck from you one day.
I'm like, yes and no. I would like to, like, I don't know, I think has always been my answer, which is like, I'm a bit risk averse. So it's hard to, like imagine myself really like building something. I don't know if I will ever have like really that first, the first step into it, whatever. But I've also said that, like, I don't know, like if someone would approach me with like a super cool project that I really believed in and, like wanted me to collaborate and be a partner in, then I might. But this to say, which they're not that different, right? Like it's just me having the first step or not, which I don't know, like it's possible that it might happen. I don't know. Also, as I gain more like knowledge and like experience in the startup world, it becomes more possible, I would say, because you do feel a bit more confident, right? Like, you've seen processes, maybe you've seen Ledgy going from seed to Series B, you've like kind of like see it, and it gives you a bit more confidence. But yeah, I would not say like, not in the short term, maybe longer term.
Yeah, I would say similar. I'm super risk averse, and I'm super kind of, I think, I'm very like adaptable and good in survival mode, but I'm kind of scared of being there right now. I'd like stability. Like this, what I'm searching for right now is kind of like stability. And I think founding, I guess working in a startup isn't the most stable thing, but it's still pretty stable compared to kind of founding and doing your own thing and like relying on investments and things like this. But I do think that there's a lot of good to be done in the world. And I would like to contribute to that somehow. And I think I am like already, and I can in many different ways. But if there was a way to do that with founding my own company, I would, or with founding it with somebody else, I would totally do that. Just would have to see when.
We were discussing IC versus manager, and manager needs to have some type of intuition into how people work, how the company works, how to enable people to become better at what they are. And I was trying to connect these not side projects, I don't want to diminish it. Like how should I call it? It's a project with immense importance that is not part of your job title. How does that aid or take away from becoming a manager?
The thing about my things that I do outside of my job do have to do a bit with managing people, I would say. Like so I lead 2 committees. I was the lead of a DEI committee. Now I'm just part of it, and I'm lead of the climate committee. And those things on top of your regular job description they create more work for you. And you have to be better at managing priorities. And at the same time, these are things that usually you're very passionate about, right? This is why you started working with the climate committee or the DEI committee, which is like, keep doing it because you like it, like because you're empowered and you are passionate about it and all of this, but also remember your other tasks, and it's okay. So there's a bit of this like push and pull, let's say, that you have to manage for yourself, but you also kind of have to help others manage, at least when you're kind of the lead, or like even a very active participant, because I'm very active in both. You and I have been active in both for maybe longer than everybody else, kind of like people have joined me along the way, but it does have this kind of manager aspect to it, outside of your job, and something that also needs to be self-managed. So it gives and it takes, like it's both. I don't know. Yeah. I always had difficulty kind of like balancing it with my normal job description. But to me, it's something that is super important, for the company, that I think, a lot of people value, and I get a lot of value out of other people valuing it. But like, I feel very good that I'm doing something good for other people.
It makes a lot of sense. So it does give and it does take.
But I think it's still similar.
It's
Just
still
saying,
similar,
because I mean, that's one of our I think also things we're working towards, because you could see this. I mean, it's very core to our culture, other aspects, or values as well. But sometimes it doesn't really go into your like, for example, progression framework or something like this. It could also be seen as glue work, which is not, like, it's very different than glue work because it has a lot of importance. But then it almost gets reduced to that, because since it's not really taken into consideration, so you're actually investing time in these things which you're actually really passionate about, and they are very important, but because they don't get the visibility that they should, I think, then they end up kind of going unnoticed almost, even though they're so important and core. But yeah,
I think it's not even visibility, because like there's a lot of things that are super visible about being in the climate committee or the DEI committee, or being the like buddy person, emoji person, like whatever those things are. It is pretty visible. It's just that often when it comes down to the progression framework, they are like, non-promotable tasks, and that's difficult to reconcile. I was talking to someone in the DEI committee, that we talk about like women do a lot of glue work, and that's often deemed as a non-promotable task. And I think that there's something to be said about the way that we think about promotable and non-promotable tasks, or the tasks that we give value to. Because one of the biggest things at Ledgy that we talk about, that's the best thing at Ledgy, is the culture and the team. And what would that be without people doing all of these culture and team tasks? So they need to be thought of as promotable tasks. They're just not in the society that we live in today. They're not thought of that way, and we need to kind of reimagine how they are thought of. Because obviously, like progression frameworks, career frameworks, they are even in startups that teach you kind of to question everything in the status quo and like all this stuff. They do come from other startups or from other ways of doing it. There is a baseline there, and often that baseline, a lot of times, also society and all this stuff has put value on things that yes, that they bring you money, they bring you success, they bring you growth, they bring you all of this. But what would that be without the culture and the people and the things that people value at the company? So
yeah, very well said. And I think this is a very good moment to tie in the equity question. Like, what is your connection to equity, especially after working at Ledgy?
Equity for me is another like representation of the time that I put into the company, but it's also really about ownership, and knowing that hopefully if the company is successful, you get to participate and like collect some of the benefits of its success. I really think that the team behind the startup is like one of the most important things, and so that's why I also feel very strongly about like how employees should participate in the success of the company in terms of like emotional connection. I also do try to keep a bit distance, because like knowing that startups have a high risk, so it's possible that you're also like your equity doesn't increase their value very much, or even like goes to zero. I still like to keep a certain distance, just because, just not to get overly excited about it. So it's kind of I do think it's important, very important, to create all of the ownership, and you feel more compelled to work for this company, to take ownership within the company of your tasks, but then also knowing the risk that comes associated with it.
There's a more personal part, which is I wasn't taught much about investing or equity or anything like that growing up. My parents are didn't teach me about any of that stuff. And working at Ledgy and getting my own equity and shares was kind of my first introduction to it. I don't invest currently, but it's kind of something that I feel a bit more in this finance world, or personal finance. It's a nice starter for me, at least. So that's kind of a personal part. But then when you're working in a company that gives you these shares, I think for me what it did was it makes me feel more connected to the mission and the company. I am sort of more connected to it, and I was already connected to it when I started at the company. But it also makes me feel more validated in fighting for this mission. So even when the startup world kind of changes a lot. You're in a startup and it's obviously going to change a lot. But when you have this ownership, you do feel even more validated in, well, I own part of the company and this is what I think we should do. I kind of feel a bit more validated in my contributions or my thoughts or my ideas or all of that. So yeah, it makes me feel more of a part of the company and its mission.
Are there any terms or clauses that you would like to see more of or less of in grant letters?
Especially working at CX, you've seen a lot of things. I mean, yeah, very generally speaking, broadly speaking, I would say less clauses that are not employee friendly and more clauses that are. But, for the non-employee friendly, you could be companies that sometimes they kind of truncate, cap, whatever your value, the valuation at the time that you leave. So you only partake in the success of the company up until the time that you leave. I think that's very employee unfriendly because you've already put in the work, so you should participate in the whole success. Other things as divesting of your options. So, when you leave, then you're actually starts divesting if you don't exercise. I think so. It's connected to exercise. So if you don't exercise, then you start actually losing your vested options month by month. So I don't know. These are just two examples that came to my head right now, but which are not employee friendly. And I personally don't see the point in them.
Yeah.
So I don't agree with them.
I mean, I think I have the same two examples. There's also the clawback clauses where when you leave, the company can buy back the shares, or any sort of very super vague bad leaver clause that's not about you being a criminal, but just they left, so now they're a bad leaver. This sort of thing. And I think this varies by jurisdiction. There was a recent Twitter thread about the US and how people take out a loan to exercise and then they don't get any of the money back because then they didn't exercise, or then the value went down and they're taxed even more. I don't know. It also depends on jurisdiction.
Thank you. Yeah, we're working on a way to help startups eliminate those kind of clauses. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you on here. Would you like to say anything to any fellow startup employees?
I would say to the broad general, as I said in the beginning, I've been really enjoying working for a startup. I do think that your scope of work and the impact that you feel is a lot bigger. I mean, of course, I kind of am a bit biased just because I've been really enjoying my experience at Ledgy. But so choosing a company that you do identify with, in terms of mission, culture, choosing a good team. I think the team is everything, and a good manager that will really help you in your professional and personal journey. And yeah, I think at startups it's quite good.
Awesome. Thank you both for being here. It was amazing to dive deeper into some of the topics. We will invite you for part 2.
Thank you so much for having us.
I just wanted to add that, I mean, because you keep in touch with Spela quite a lot, but we don't, and it's been amazing to see like your professional development, and you're so confident, and it's really been incredible to hear you speak about your domain. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.